Hey, Math 30-1s. Just want to talk about very specific questions that were not technically covered in my notes. You can still do them. It just takes a little bit of work. I'm just going to show you how to do some of them. Um, specifically, solving those reciprocal ratios, the 1 over cos and the 1 over sine ones, like within a unit circle or not, within 0 to 2, 4 pi. And then kind of using your knowledge of the unit circle to give exact values for specific expressions, not just for like sine 210. Sine 210, we can determine from the unit circle where the reference angle is, what point would be on that. So just like 210 would be over here, 30-degree reference. So sine would be a half, right? Because it's the shorter side that's opposite the 30. So sine is a half. It's in the second quadrant. Add sugar to coffee, so it's positive. So sine 210 should be positive a half, right? But what if I multiply it with something else, like cos 330? What is the exact value of that? And we'll have to go through that in a second. Let's try out these first ones here. You should be able to find these PDFs of this blank worksheet in your, or in the same place where this video is. Hopefully you did. Okay, so okay, so we're going to try to determine within a full 2 circles. You notice that this goes to 4 pi, so this is like 2 times around a circle. What angles of theta would match this? And technically, you could just plug this in your calculator, find out within 0 to 2 pi where all the intersection points are. But we're going to try to give these exact values as possible. And sometimes your calculator is not the most useful for that. Depends on your program too, like Desmos does a pretty good job at giving you pretty exact values in terms of pi, but not all the time. So we're going to try to do this by the algebraic method. So what I'm going to do for A is, first of all, okay, secant is 1 over cosine. So I'm going to write that in there. And then I'm just going to rearrange this for cosine. Cosine theta. So I'm going to times the cosine theta up to the other side, plus also you could just say, oh, it's a reciprocal. So I'm just going to take the reciprocal of both sides and flip it up. So I'm going to times the cos theta up, divide the root 2 down. This ends up being 1 over root 2. Nothing happened with the sign. It was still positive. It stays positive. So this is still positive. So now I can follow the same logic that we had before. Where's cosine positive? In this quadrant and this quadrant, using the add sugar to coffee rule. Okay, where is cosine equal to 1 over root 2? And 1 over root 2, if you just take this cos inverse of that, you realize that's at 45 degrees. In terms of pi, though, 45 degrees is pi over 4. Okay, so this is going to be pi over 4, and this one's going to be pi over 4. Okay. Now what we want to determine is what are the, what do you call those, standard position angles within 0 to 2, or 0 to 4 pi, not 2 pi. So my first one is going to be pi over 4. Okay, that's good. Second one's going to go around and hit to this point here. So that's going to be, I'm just going to write the math up here, what it would be. It'd be a whole 2 pi, which is a full circle, minus pi over 4. Then we could do this all in degrees and just change it into radians later. This would be 7 pi over 4. Okay, now those are just those two. Now we're going to have to go around the circle again. So we're going to have to go a whole circle plus a little bit more. So that's going to be 2 pi plus a quarter pi. So 2 plus a quarter, math editor. So this would be 9 pi over 4. And then I'm going to go around again. Keep on going around, keep on going around, keep going around. I'm going to go past, I'm going to go 4 pi and then I'm going to back it up. So this next one is going to be 4 pi minus a quarter. Okay, 4 minus a quarter, math editor, be 15 pi over 4. That's essentially how you kind of solve those kind of questions. They're the simpler ones too. They're not like the quadratic ones we solved in our notes there. This would be the same idea. I'm just going to quickly go through this one. So this would be 1 over sine is equal to negative 1.5557. I'm going to take the reciprocal of both sides, so this will be negative 1 over 1.5557. I'm going to quickly determine what my reference angle is. So my reference angle is just going to be the sine inverse of the positive version of that. So you just want to strip away that negative. This ends up being really close to 40 degrees, 40.0000. So let's do the nearest two decimal places. So this would be 40.00 degrees. And we're in degrees. Can we make sure my calculator is in degrees? Yeah. We're in degrees because it specifies here in the question. It's in degrees. Okay, so we go to our cast rule here, add sugar to coffee. Where is sine negative? Well, sine is negative in this quadrant, in this quadrant. Both of these are about 40 degrees. And we're trying to find it between a full circle, one way, and then back, because you can see there's a negative 360. So we're going to go back as well. So the first circle is going to be this way in the positive direction. Those two answers. So 180. Oops. 180 plus our angle, so that ends up being 220. I don't know what happened there. Degrees, and then I'm going to go 360 minus my angle and get 320. 100. Looking pretty good. Round up. There's a bunch of nines there, so just round it right up. If you're using all the decimal places that were in the 40 there. The next one here, we're going to go backwards now. So we're going to go back this way around. You can see that one of my angles is going to be negative 40.00 degrees. And the other one is going to be 180 minus a, so it would be negative 140. 0.00 degrees. There you go. Sorry about that. Cool. So let's look at these ones down here. So these ones are just asking us to kind of reverse the operation. They give us an angle. Now we want to determine what does this expression equal. Like I was saying before, sine 210, just by itself, sine 210. So if I were to draw 210, I'm just going to draw the angle for 210. This is my logic, what I would do to solve this question. I'd find out 210 lands in the second quadrant here. It has a reference angle of 30 degrees. Let me just draw that in there. So that's my angle of oh, sorry, that's not the right quadrant I was saying. What was I thinking? You guys caught me, I know you did. It lands in the third quadrant. This is 210. And the reference angle is still 30 degrees. Okay, I'm in the right quadrant now. Now, what I know about this here, if I were to draw a little triangle around that 30, if I go across the 30, so across the triangle to this side over here, since that's the 30 is the smaller of the angles, so this should be the smaller side, okay? Since it's the smaller side, and it's going downwards, this is negative. Actually, both these are going to be negative because they're in this quadrant. So this other side here, not too important because that would be the cos side, because cos is your x and sine is your y. Okay. So this would be your root 3 over 2, but it would also be negative as well. So sine 210 is negative 1/2. Okay. Then if I go over to the other one, 330 is in the fourth quadrant. There's 330. A reference angle of 30 degrees as well. I'm going to use blue this time. Now, because this is cos now, that's the x one. Now I'm concerned about this one here. This is also going to be negative 1/2 down that side. Okay, because 30 degrees is the smaller angle. But x, which is the adjacent to the 30, is going to be the larger side, sorry. It's going to be the larger side. So that this is going to be positive root 3 over 2. And then we just do the math. Multiply the tops, multiply the bottoms. So this is going to be negative root 3 over 4. So there's my exact value. All right. The only way to really verify, see if that's correct, is you type sine 210 and cos 330 in your calculator. You get this ugly number. It's negative, so that's good. At least we got some part that's right. And then you want to type in the final answer as well. So negative root 3. Make sure that divide by 4 is outside the root. You should get the same answer. Mine's backwards, but they end up being the exact same thing. Okay. So let's try out this next one here. So pi over 3, which is 60 degrees. So that's going to be in the first quadrant right there. Pi over 3, 60 degrees. I'm going to use red for this one. Now it's tan. So the importance of this one is it's tan. So tan, if you remember correctly from tan, pi over 3 is y over x. So I got to determine the y value. Now this is the same as 60 degrees. Okay, so that's the larger angle. So that means this is the larger side, and then the adjacent side down here is the smaller side. That's a half, right? So I'm going to have root 3 over 2 divided by 1 over 2. 2's cancel out there because they're both in the denominator. So I end up getting, if you want to, you could also take the reciprocal and then cross them off. But I end up getting root 3. Now you could verify this too. You type that in your calculator and see if it ends up being what root 3 is. And root 3 is like 1.73-ish. Okay, so we know what tan is. So that's just root 3, 10 pi over 3. It's positive because it ends up being the first quadrant, so that's good. Now the next thing I want to do is determine what is, just color my answers a little bit better. I want to determine what cos 3 pi over 4 is. I'm going to write that out. So 3 pi over 4 is not quite a pi because the number on the top is less than the number on the bottom. So it's in this second quadrant here. Is a reference angle of pi over 4. Now remember, the beauty of these pi kind of numbers is that the denominator is also the reference angle denominator, so it just ends up being nice like that. Pi over 4. Remember, that one there's 45 degrees. Actually, this whole angle, you go 3 times 180 divided by 4. It's 135. If you want to play in degrees, you can play in degrees as well. Okay. Now it's pi over 4, so that means both of these sides are, depends on how you want to write it, 1 over root 2 and 1 over root 2. But this one's going backwards, so that's going to be negative 1 over root 2. This one's going upwards, so that's positive. Okay, that's important because cos, remember that's our x value. So x value is negative 1 over root 2. So this is the one we're worried about. This is cos. Okay. So you can multiply these together now. Let's multiply these together. 2. Now, I'm not too concerned about rationalizing at this point. That's a math 20 thing to do. So this ends up being root 3 over root 2. If you want to put that as one big bracket root, you can have square root of root 3 over 2. If you want to rationalize it, you can. This ends up being the root of 6 over 2. The negative root of 6. And it's all negative in that situation. There you go. So you're going to do the same thing. This was nice. I purposely made this one nice with 150 there. They're all 150. Put some squares in it this time. About 150 in this quadrant. Reference angle is 30 degrees. And they're all going to be the same. So I'm just going to use red here. It was supposed to be red. Now it turned blue. I don't know what's happening up there. So across the 30, because the 30 is the smaller angle, that's going to be the half side. Adjacent to the 30 is going to be the root 3 over 2. It's going backwards, so this is a negative number here. And this one's a positive number because it's going upwards. Okay, so now I know enough information to solve this question. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do each of these pieces here. So sine 150. Sine 150 is going to be 1/2 because that's going to be the y value. It's going to be the x value is the other one. Remember, sine represents the y value. Cos represents the x value, et cetera, right? But this one's being squared, so it's sine squared, so this is going to be that number squared, times cos, which is negative root 3 over 2, plus negative root 3 over 2 all squared, because that's cos squared, and then sine, which is just 1/2. Okay, then we just go through the math, or the steps of this one here. So I'm squaring 1/2, that ends up being 1 over 4. So square the top, square the bottom. I'm going to rewrite that because that didn't change. And then I square this one, so I square the top, square the bottom. I get 3 over 4. And then I get 1/2. I'm going to multiply everything here, so I get negative root 3 over 8. You multiply the tops, multiply the bottoms. And here we get 3 over 8. Because we have a common denominator, we'll have a root or denominator of 8 here, and my top is going to be negative root 3 plus 3. Or if you want to rewrite it, you can write it this way. Doesn't really matter to me how you write it, but that would be your exact answer. There you go. So this kind of questions could be asked. It's nothing that we haven't shown you. It's actually some of the stuff here is more for next week's first lesson. I already shared that one as well. What week are we on right now? Week 6? Yeah, the week 6 stuff coming up. Because it uses more exactive values, the unit circle numbers, rather than just approximate numbers like this one up here. Use approximate numbers. Okay, so hopefully that answered a few questions. Hopefully that helped you out, and I'll see you in the next video.